Yeah. Yeah, Kongo sote tutateseka, kila siku mauaji tunachoka, mazingira kabisa inaribika, piga mama zetu wanapakwa, sisi raia inatushangaza, bila ipeneza ivita tutaweza, sote tungane mkono pamoja, kwani umoja ni nguvu, tupambane kisujaa. Ya kwanza hatuna nyumba, ya pili hatuna maji, ya tatu hatuende shule, sisi sote tupiga kelele, hatutaki vita, tunataka amani, na sote tuwe pamoja, sote ni bendera moja, damu moja, watoto wa baba moja. No, one people, one nation, together we can fight the wars in the world, stop exploitation, cause every day my people die. No con, no phone, yeah, no con, no phone. On fa pas soldat, naza mwana mboga, yo African Free Sudan, yo African Free Sudan. Walimu uwa Lumumba, mpaka leo tunamurememba, mapoto na yakaenda, haikutosha mzee akafata. Mungu tuomba msaada, niko mimi naona hii dunia inaenda isha, piga na njaa inaongezeka, tunakosa hata chakula kuchacha, piga na watoto wanakuwa wanajeshi, na wayatima wanakuwa wakimbizi, wanadamu tauawa kama mbuzi, sababu tu ya kuiba almasi. Tunataka amani joto kata vita no, tuungane mkono wa pana mashina no, tunataka amani joto kata vita no, tuungane mkono wa pana mashina no. One people, one nation, together we can fight.
Congo Crisis Explained, M23 Rebels, Mineral Profiteers, and AES Updates. Welcome to This Month in Africa, a collaborative effort between African Stream and Authentic African, where we break down this month's breaking news and its impact on Pan-Africanism and Africa's independence. Today, we delve into the ongoing crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo and give you key updates from the Alliance of Sahel States. I'm Joe Hotagua, founder of Authentic African and co-host of This Week in Africa. And my goal is to help people visit, move, and invest in the continent of Africa. With that, I will turn it over to my co-host to do her introduction.
Greetings. I'm happy to be back. My name is Inem Richardson. I am a journalist with African Stream. Unfortunately, one of the most censored medias on the internet, but we're still here. We're out here. So please make sure that you continue to follow us. We have some links to our videos in the description. I am also an organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP, and I am also a member of the Thomas Sankara Center for African Liberation and Unity, based in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, where I am based, where I live. We're super excited. We have a special guest on today, so let's pass it to her.
Yes. I could do a quick intro before she does her own intro. I do want to just mention, we're excited to have Ekila Bofunda on. She's a Pan-Africanist Congolese journalist and a spokesperson for the international organization Urgences Panafricanists. She is also a children's book author and a producer of the children's animated series focused on Pan-African history and values. So with that, do you want to do a quick introduction yourself, Ekila? Oh, you're on mute. Ekila, I think you're on mute.
Your mic is still muted.
Thank you for having me. Sorry for that.
Absolutely.
I'm very happy to be, your guest for this restart of the show. And so I'm a journalist. I'm Congolese, and now I'm in political exile from my country. 1 year ago, I was forced to leave my country, but so now I continue this fight. I'm the spokesperson, the international spokesperson for Urgences Panafricanistes in French. That's the organization of Kémy Séba, and I'm very happy to be here to talk about Congo, because it's it's a crisis that all the Pan-Africanists, the diaspora should understand deeply. And I hope I will be, able to give you a lot of information and concrete maybe solutions, to go forward and to have a solution for this crisis. Yeah.
Excellent. Happy to have you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. So we want to start off the show with something new. This is something that I learned from the All African People's Revolutionary Party, which is we want to start with an ancestor call-in. So we want to give a shout out to some very important, very revolutionary ancestors who guide us. And who are also relevant to the conversation today. So I'm going to call in two important Congolese revolutionaries that you may or may not have heard of. I'm going to call in Pierre Mulele and Léonie Abo. These are two Congolese freedom fighters who actually fought after the death of the brutal assassination of Patrice Lumumba, continued the struggle in Congo for the total liberation of the country and for the liberation of Africa. So these were actual freedom fighters who fought with arms for national liberation, for socialism, for Pan-Africanism, for the unity of the continent, for the liberation of Congo, for an end to imperialism. So I'll say it one more time, Pierre Mulele and Léonie Abo.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I just want to also acknowledge what Ekila said just so quickly, but she's in political exile. So she's fighting the good fight. And I'm really happy to have you here to speak about this, because not only does she have the knowledge from being on the ground, but she's obviously been working on this for a long time, and that is why she's in political exile. So with that, we would like to start to get into the stories of the day. But before we do, we didn't get a chance to ask you where, Ekila, where can people find you and follow what you're doing online before we get into the stories?
So we have, the social network of the organization, which is Urgences Panafricanistes. We can maybe write it somewhere in the screen, And I have my personal profile. It's Ekila, Ekilaaa. You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, Facebook, everything. So you can follow me. You can follow my analysis, my videos. Also, I work for another media, Pan-Africanist media, that was founded by Kemi Seba, also is Afrique Resurrection, and you have a lot of Pan-Africanist leaders working on that media, also like Nathalie Yomb, our big sister. And so I invite people to check those social networks to have an idea of our work. We are there for more than 20 years, fighting against imperialism, against French Africa, and this is fight that we know a lot. We have, participate on putting the basis of all the revolutionary regime that are now, in Niger, in Burkina Faso, and in Mali, and all other countries that are where we have, headquarters. Yeah.
Great. And so we'll add all of that to the descriptions for everybody to check out once they're watching the replay. So let's get into the first story. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, or people who are back, we have been doing this weekly. We're now moving to a monthly version of This Week in Africa is now This Month in Africa. And so we will be reviewing a deep dive into the Congo, M23 rebels, their advancements, devastations to the people, and the mineral war profiteers. So the first thing we're going to get into is naming the DRC mineral war profiteers. So the goal is to do a deep dive into a topic so that you guys can get a little bit more of an understanding of all the different pieces that make up where we are today. So with that, many often speak of the 3-decade-long Western-backed proxy war over natural resources in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In vague terms, leaving the public confused about what's happening, why it's happening, the players, and the funders. Moreover, many in the imperialist-backed media frame it as a complex war, obscuring that it is a resource war, really, and that it would not be happening, at least not at this alarming scale, if the DRC wasn't the world's most minimal rich resource country with over $24 trillion of minerals underfoot to power global technological advances. So we are going to jump into a video and give you some commentary on the other side.
A range of beneficiaries. You have the neighboring countries and their elites, Paul Kagame, and Yoweri Museveni, Rwanda and Uganda. You have multinational corporations. We're talking about mining companies at the bottom of the supply chain, the Glencores, the Ivanhoes. We're talking about, tech companies at the top of the supply chain, the Apples and the Tesla and the Dells and the Microsoft. We're talking about multilateral institutions like the World Bank, International Monetary Fund. The World Bank wrote the mining laws for the Congo, right? Because it's a weak country, weak leadership coming out of war. And they wrote it in the interest of private capital. The World Bank has a sister wing called the International Finance Corporation. But the International Finance Corporation was invested in mines in the Congo. And then, of course, you also have the local elites, the ones who are making $20,000 right now, $20,000, $30,000 a month, while the average Congolese lives on like $2.15 a day. And that's actually about 70% of the population. So you have a coterie and a complex of institutions, individuals benefiting from Congo's weakness, from the colonial infrastructure that's still very much in place. And probably chief among them is Dan Gertler, right? The Israeli billionaire. He became a billionaire off the Congo, first having a monopoly of the diamond sector, then moving into, the mineral sector with his compatriot Benny Steinmetz. Both Benny Steinmetz and Dan Gertler at one point, they owned a company called Nicanor. And they had concessions and they took it to the London Stock Exchange, the alternative investment market, in a public offering. At the time, the public offering was one of the largest on the alternative investment market. And their company was valued at over $1 billion, which at that time, around 2008 or so, was more than the Congolese budget. You have individuals and then all the marketing firms and all the agencies that are handling the taking of companies public, like you see, with Nicanor. And then also a number of years ago, the Department of Justice in the United States, filed a, claim against a Wall Street hedge fund called Zip. They renamed themselves to Sculpture, but they fined them for hundreds of millions of dollars for corrupt practices in the Congo and Africa.
So that there was a bit of an understanding of who the Profiteers are. I mean, they went through marketing firms and IPO, individuals in Israel and other individuals locally. Ekila, as someone from the Congo, can you speak to some of what you see as some of the Profiteers, how they're profiting and some of the practices that are happening there that is leading to the what's happening in the war there in the Congo?
Yeah, of course, the problem that we have as Congolese is that we have three enemies. We have three enemies because all these multinationals, I think that's most of the people that are now following, this show or, in general, like media like African Stream, they know about the fact that, of course, this is the multinationals that are taking, the big money of all of this. This is a crisis that is perfect for them to make money. And of course, when you put war somewhere, when you put genocide on a special place in Africa or somewhere, it's for because you have interest to do it. So we all understand that, the maestro of all of this are the multinationals. But also the problem that we have is we have these neighboring countries of Congo who are the puppets of these multinationals, and especially the US, And the third problem that we have is also that the Congolese authorities, they are, implicated on the traffic. They allow people to do all this exploitation, this plundering of our soil, and they take a lot of money of that. They, as individual, they take a lot of money. You have the power. In the video, they were talking about Dan Gertler. Dan Gertler, is giving millions, for example, to the Tshisekedi family, so the president of the Congo. So when you understand that this is like a complicity, and when you know that the Congolese power obey to the same, Western officing, to the US, to the multinationals, you understand that, of course, we are alone as a people, as Congolese people, we are alone to try to fight. And it's very complicated because everywhere if we don't have like Congolese, a Congolese fighter or a Congolese power that is acting for Congo, for Congolese people, if we don't have that, we will never, have a solution. As long as the Congolese power has to obey to the U.S. government, what are we going to do? They are just serving the same cause. So the fact is that when you understand, for example, the previous president, Joseph Kabila, he was there for 18 years, and at a certain point he has to to leave because the public opinion, the pressure was too hard. But also the problem that they had, the US had this problem with him, that he starts to make business with China. So it's always the same thing. They are doing their war on our soil in Africa. This is kind of the same, the same configuration almost everywhere in Africa where we have a lot of resources. And so we are, of course, the victims of all of that. Populations are victims of that. And so they put another president. It was another puppet. We all know that, this election in 2018, it was not really elections. It was a deal between Kabila and Tshisekedi. But very quickly, U.S. helped Tshisekedi to organize, the leaving of Kabila from all. Kabila party and allies from all, the big institutions of the country. And it was really to make sure that they take back all the power. To more understand, I think that it's very important to go back in time, because if we don't do that, we allow people to think also that maybe we are in an ethnic war, that maybe it's an inter-ethnic war between Africans, And I think that one of the big problems that we have now is to try to fight with this, army. It's a virtual army that is, I don't know what's the balloon. It's from me, or okay. So this numeric army from Paul Kagame, from the PRF, they are trying, to make people think that we are in an ethnic war, and that this is an ethnic question. But if you go back in time, you understand that even in 87 in Uganda, when US decided to finance, to organize, and to to help training all the people from the PRF, they did that because they already had this goal to arrive in Congo and to make sure that they can plunder the resources and have their hand on our resources. So they have used Rwandese, that were also refugees in Uganda, Paul Kagame and all the crew from PRF, but also Museveni, because he was also involved on the PRF creation at this moment of the time. And when you understand that everything starts from there, when I say start, of course it's the result of the colonization, and they had to find another thing, to make sure that they still have the control of our resources. And it was perfect to divide us as African. So they have started to finance the PRF in Uganda in 87. And for example, the genocide that took place in 94 in Rwanda, it was a step to arrive in Congo. When you understand that, and it's very complex to talk about that, because for people in Rwanda, we are close, of course, of Rwanda, Rwandan population. We make the difference very clearly. All the activists, the Congolese activists, they make a difference between the regime, of course, and the population of Rwanda. The population of Rwanda, they think that Paul Kagame are their savior, that he has stopped the genocide, which is not the case, because who did the attack on Habyarimana's plane in 94? Because it was, this event launched the genocide in 94. And when you understand that it is not for ethnic reason, but to arrive in Congo to take the resources, you can understand and maybe have a better analysis of everything. Western forces, Western country, they have used the ethnic division to make all this chaos. So in 94, when this plane was attacked, they knew it was, it's going to be the beginning of this genocide. And what people don't talk about is the fact that, of course, you had Tutsi that were killed by Hutu, but you also had Tutsi killed by Tutsi, and you also had, Hutu that were killing Hutus, and also you had Tuas that were killing. They don't even exist anymore. I mean, they were like 3% of the population. They are not even there. And you have also this category of people that we never talk about. It's the Hutsi, who are, the mixing of Hutu and Tutsi, and they were the big part of the population. So when you understand also that the founder of the Interamwe who has made the genocide, who has perpetrated the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda in 94. But the founder of the Interamwe is also a Tutsi, Robert Kajuga. So when you understand that, and you understand all the mechanic, and you understand that the goal was to arrive in Congo for the resources, you understand more how we can start from 87, with the PRF creation, from in Uganda, then you go in Rwanda, and then you make all this happen to arrive in Rwanda. And this argument, very, used in the history of all the people of all the world, when you use the security argument, to arrive somewhere. Look right now what is happening in Congo. Rwanda is using the argument of FDLR, saying that they are, the Hutu, the person who perpetrated genocide when they arrive in Congo. They reorganize themselves as FDLR, and so now they are a threat for Rwanda, which is absolutely not true. When I ask people, from the PRF to let me know who are the FDLR, how much they are, where are their headquarters, what they are doing. They say that they are in the Congolese army, but who are there? Where? They cannot answer those questions, and it's just the perfect argument, that they can use also in the tripartite meetings in the Security Council. We always, we are always pressured with this argument of the FDLR that are supposed to be a threat, to Rwanda. But the reality is that you can make a link between how much we have, like, Rwandan comptoir of resources, the amount of Rwandan comptoir in DRC, and how much the resources are plundered, how much they are exporting as Rwanda country, as the country Rwanda, they export cobalt. For example, you can make, a strong link between that and between the increasing of the violence of M23 or other militias. And this is, this is factual. The fact that we are always talking about ethnicity as a threat, like the FDLR, they are threatening Rwanda. And so we have to be there as Rwandese. We have to be there to make sure that, they don't attack the country back. And this is, all of this is not, it is lie. And we should really pay attention to that and be focused on the fact that, yes, it's for minerals. And when you understand, all the traffic, where it starts and where it's going, on which products, you understand exactly what was the goal from decades, to arrive in Congo. What I also would like to say is that you can also make a link between this diplomacy, the diplomacy that you have, and the fact that in the U.S., for example, for example, the law Frank Dodd, it was voted in the United States with in the financial sector of the U.S. And in this law it was to protect the citizens, but in this law you had a special section about the Congolese mineral to make sure that it's we can have a traceability of these minerals. But in the same time, you can see that there is the creation of like a company that was supposed to make sure that the minerals are legally, ethically, I can say ethically, taken from the soil in mines where people are well treated, and to make sure that these minerals are ethic, so it can arrive in Apple, in Microsoft, in HP, or in all the weapon industry. And so it was just, when you understand who are the founder of this company, you understand that there is really a trick. They make sure that they can vote a law, and then in the same time, so because of the the public opinion pressure on the Congo, because people were talking, there is a problem, you are exploiting the Congolese resources, you have to change something. So Obama decided to vote this law. But then in the same time, you can see that there is a company which is run by person who are involved in the Congolese war crimes. It was a Jew from Britain, and all these people, Chris Huber, you have also John Crowley, you have David Ben Susan. They have founded this company, just to have a cover for all this traffic. But everything just was taking place as usual. So when you also understand, and I will finish on this point, when you understand also that, for example, this company I was talking about, the name is Itski, that this company which is supposed to labelize ethically, to give the label ethic to all the resources that they were taking, the treaty resources of Congo, you understand that it was also founded by James Kabarebe. You understand that there is a big traffic on Congolese minerals, and that's the only point that we should taking as a main point in the analysis, and don't fall in the ethnic argument. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think there was a lot there. I mean, the couple of points that I think I took away was, one, it's not an ethnic war. Obviously, there are outside, influences, number one. And number two, I think it was important is kind of drawing the parallels between the two countries and how Rwanda is involved. And you mentioned the M23 rebels, and that is what we want to get to next. And we have a story that we want to touch on, and at least in terms of understanding who the M23 rebels are. I think one point I just want to add, I think you said a lot there, it was all very important, very impactful, is that the continent of Africa, one of our biggest challenges is that we have the unrefined natural resources. They get exported illegally or legally, refined, and then sold back to Africans at a premium price. And I think that's what I think Africans need to know. iPhones, all the devices that we have, those minerals are coming, the minerals that make up those devices are coming from the Congo. I think that's just really important. And I think that you've said it all. So that was all I had to add. I do want to jump into the next video, because I think this kind of gives a little bit more of a background on the M23 militia. Has cited that the Tutsis' longtime marginalization in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with roots in 1994 Rwandan genocide, as you mentioned earlier, and as its reason for existing. However, M23 appears to serve more so as an economic tool, facilitating the extraction and smuggling of minerals like gold and tantalum, which Rwanda exports despite processing few domestic reserves itself. Is the M23 a genuine defender of marginalized communities, or merely a proxy force for Rwandan economic and geopolitical interests? I think we know the answer to that, but let's jump into this video, and we have some commentary on the other side.
Defending the Democratic Republic of Congo's marginalized Tutsis, or a Rwandan proxy force looting land and minerals. Recent headlines about M23 capturing Goma demand a deeper look, starting in 1994. M23's roots trace back to the Rwandan genocide, which killed 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus, forcing 1.2 million Rwandan refugees to escape into the DRC. Rwanda's Patriotic Front, or the RPF, led by now Rwandan President Paul Kagame, invaded the DRC alongside Uganda and Congolese rebel Laurent Désiré Kabila to return refugees and get their hands on genocide perpetrators. However, the UN documented numerous RPF human rights abuses, including mass killings of Hutu refugees. Kabila overthrew DRC's President Mobutu Sese Seko in 1997, installing Rwandan and Congolese Tutsi figures in key government positions. One of these men, James Kabarebe, was made Chief of Staff of the Congolese Armed Forces. He had fought alongside Kagame in the capture of Kigali during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. The 1997 war was also the first documented use of proxies by Rwanda. Here is Nyamwasa Kayumba, the Rwandan Army's Chief of Staff, explaining just how much Rwanda was involved.
Toute l'idée était de réunir tous ces Zaïrois qui venaient d'endroits différents, avec des histoires différentes, et de trouver un moyen qu'ils fassent cause commune. On voulait essayer de les impliquer ensemble dans une sorte de mouvement politique organisé, capable d'articuler un programme et même de justifier la guerre qui commençait au Zaïre.
Le Congo actuellement est en train d'être saigné à blanc. Les fraudeurs font traverser des centaines de kilos d'or par semaine, en passant par le Rwanda vers l'extérieur.
Seeking to dilute Rwandan influence.
Yeah, so I think that gave great context. If you guys want to watch the rest of that video, it's available on the Ahmad Kabalo's YouTube channel, if I'm not mistaken. So that is in the description below if you want to watch the rest of that video. But I think that gives some context to a little bit about what Ekila was mentioning before, the kind of the history that led to really what built the M23 rebels and where we are today. So Ekila, do you have any additional thoughts you want to add after watching this video and us getting a little bit more context as to how this all began and where we are today?
I think that the whole video is very interesting to watch, and of course I encourage people to just go and watch because there is a lot of details. But what I would like also, again to say is that we know that M23 they are Rwandan people, okay? They are Rwandan. Most of them, they are Tutsis. And it's not a problem to say that, oh, if they are Tutsis, so they cannot be Congolese. It's not the point. What is important on that, it's to understand that we should not let the ethnic question dominate the debate because it's about the resources. When you understand how M23 was created and from what it was birthed, it was born, you understand that there is really a plan to just arrive in Congo and to make sure that with the revendication, the ethnic revendication and the ethnic rights and the talking about the stigmatization of people. So they would like to enter the army, they would like to enter everywhere, but where they came from initially. So now we have an infiltrated army with people that are revendicate every time they are. They say, okay, we're gonna leave the army because we don't have that right and we are stigmatized as a Tutsi but we are Congolese and this is what we want. But to be honest, they come from Rwanda and it's just a production from the PRF, from the Kigali regime, and it's just this is the problem. This is always the problem that we have is that they if you listen to their revendication, they say that we are Congolese and we need the power to listen to us. But this is just a lie. And when you understand also, because I was talking about the fact that the Congolese power actually is like in complicity with all this machine against Congolese people. The thing is that when you understand that during the beginning of the first mandate of Félix Tshisekedi, he was, he put all the M23 people in a hotel in Kinshasa, you know, just to make sure that they can have discussion, negotiations, and everything. Why now is that, you know, is that big a problem? Now it's a problem, but you knew from the beginning, because before you know, you was at the position of president, you were in the opposition. And when we go back on the tweets of the UDPS, so the party of the president, when you go back on the tweets of Felix Tshisekedi even, you can see that he was condemning M23, you know. But now you change your mind and you understand that you have to sit with those people, because you understand that the Congolese power is also in complicity with all this traffic, you know. So I think that there is a lot of points that people have to understand. It's very complex, but it's very complex also because year after year, there is new actors, there is new story about all of that, you know, behind all of that. And so it's difficult for people to really understand. That's why I always say that don't be fooled, you know, don't be focused on, you know, don't let the ethnic question dominate the debate. Just go back on the resources, because M23 is there for the resources, okay? And they are not Congolese. And it's not, you know, you can be Congolese. You can be Congolese, you can be Tutsi and Congolese, you can, this is not a problem. We are Pan-Africanist. We are not against other African, you know, being in Congo or anything else. The problem is when you arrive somewhere in the land and you decide to make a genocide, you decide to massacre people, and you decide to you know, to make this chaotic situation to be, you know, being, you know, the puppets of the Western world, just to make sure that you make profits, you make benefits on the resources. Everyone, you know, is talking about, you know, the success of Rwanda right after the genocide, how much they have rebuilt their country. But how can you be proud of rebuilding a country first on a lie, because you don't go anywhere if you rebuild something, if you have a, you know, a narrative of lying to everyone, and on the blood of your brothers and sisters of Congo? This is not Pan-Africanism, because Paul Kagame, you know, people say that he's a Pan-Africanist. Come on. So I think that this is the main point. This is not of, you know, this is not a matter of saying that, oh, they are Congolese and they are Tutsis, and so because they are Tutsis, they are stigmatized, they are massacred, they, you know, they live, you know, horrible things. No, we have more than 400 ethnies in Congo, and if you check the news every day on you know, the Congolese news, you can see that there is problems between all the ethnies that we have, you know. But it's just that they want, you know, they want us to be focused on that imaginary problem. I don't say that there is no murder against Tutsi. I don't say that. I don't say that sometimes you have hatred murders and stuff like that. I say that it's just, you know, it is not like the you know, the biggest problem of ethnic situation in Congo. If you go in Kinshasa, you understand that not far from Kinshasa, you had the massacre of Yumbi. You had all the massacres between the, you know, different ethnies in Kasai. You have everything. All of that is a reality of Congo, because we are a big country and we have a lot of ethnies. And so I think that the revendication, the first revendication, the political revendication of the M23 is that they want their space, they want to be recognized, they want to have place in politics, in the social life, to you know, to be in their lands. You know, let's be focused on why you are there, where you were born, and why you are there, you know. So if people want to understand who are the M23, don't talk about them as Congolese. They are not Congolese. They are just, yeah, they are Rwandese. And yeah, I mean, we are not focused on what the conference of the Berlin conference, the borders that they have made. It is not a problem, you know. This is not our problem. We were there before, you know, the Western world came on our lands. And so the main problem is that you have people, you have the PRF regime, you have the Museveni's regime that wants to enter the lands to spoil the resources for the Western world in majority, you know, the big profit are for the Western world. And for that, you don't have any problems to rape people, to massacre people, to organize a genocide. Because, you know, in this region, you had three genocides. I know that people, they don't want to hear that. And they say that this is a negation of, you know, the history. I would say it's more a revision of the history. We have to understand that, yes, there were all these genocides, not only the genocide in Rwanda, but also after that, the genocide of Hutu people in the Congolese soil, where more people than the Tutsi who were in Rwanda were dead. You know, there is a lot of archives of footage, which is, you know, horrible to see. And right after that, from 98, has started the Genocost. So the genocide, the Congolese genocide for economical interest. It started in 98, and it never stopped from this period, you know, from this moment. Yeah.
Also much appreciated all the details and the context. I think that this is all really important and helpful for the folks, as we saw in some of the commentary. I think really disassociating it from the idea of this, the ethnic battles, and really it's about territory and financial gain. Before we move into the next topic, which I think ties right into what you were just saying, Inem, do you have anything to add to this particular topic?
You know, I think Ekila covered this and is covering this so well. I mean, she's clearly an expert on this topic. I just want to highlight a couple of things that she said, and then, you know, maybe I can add a little perspective here. You know, I think it's really important that Ekila has pointed out several times the complicity of the Congolese government in what is going on, because I think a lot of people are kind of confused. Like there's there's this idea of like, maybe like Congo is like fighting Rwanda and this kind of good guy, bad guy thing. Actually, you know, the human cost is the lives of people in Congo, but unfortunately, Congo itself is a neo-colony. You know, it's under neo-colonialism, like much of Africa. And so, you know, Tshisekedi also represents the interests of the West. So there's not really anybody in terms of Congolese, in terms of leadership in the region, in this entire region of, you know, Central Africa, the Great Lakes. There's not really any leader there that is actually defending the masses of Congolese people on either side. And so that's, you know, that's really the one of the core parts of the problem. You know, it's like there's not really like a revolutionary type of government, a Pan-African type of government in place in Congo either. And that's, you know, and I think that's important to highlight, because that also explains why, you know, our comrade who's on this call, Ekila, is in exile. You know, somebody might hear that and be confused. It's because she's fighting for Congo. You know, she's given her life. She's like dedicated her life to defending Congo. How can she be in exile by Congolese authorities? But, you know, I think that context is important, and she's pointed it out several times. And then I just want to add, I think also this question of like ethnicity. African conflicts are always depicted in Western media. It's honestly, I think, very racist. A lot of times the depiction is like this ancient tribal warfare type of narrative. Like that's like how they like to kind of do this spin, like the Africans are always fighting each other. They're like tribal people, whatever. Like that's how the West depicts these things. And I think because of that, people think it's just so complex. It's so confusing. I don't know, you know, all of these different ethnic groups. I don't know who all the players are. And it's really not, it's never really like that. It's always about the resources. It's always about the wealth of Africa. I'll say like in the Sahel, I think this is a parallel that I think is interesting with Congo. It's the same thing here. They say it's like religion, right? Like it's the terrorists, and they frame it like it's some sort of religious war, but it's actually the same thing. It's the same people at the end who back the terrorists who are destroying the Sahel in terms of like their international backers on the world stage. It's the same people who are backing M23. And I think that the comparison is actually quite strong. You know, this is something I tell people in Burkina Faso when we're trying to understand Congo, like M23, who are these people? I tell them to imagine, you know, if these terrorist groups are fighting, come and basically occupy your city or your village or your town. That's the equivalent basically of what M23 is. And, you know, like I said, same backers. And for here, us in the Sahel, this is easy to understand because we actually don't consider these terrorist groups Africans. We consider them imperialists. So when we talk about them with one another, will say like, these are not Africans, fellow Africans we're fighting. They've chosen basically to represent imperial interests. And so we're fighting against imperialists who maybe are taking an African form. And I think it's the same thing. This is how we have to look at it and treat M23. It's not an ethnic question. It's not, like Maud-Salomé Ekila has said many times, she's a Pan-Africanist. She's part of one of the leading Pan-African organizations on this continent. The day that Africa unites, there's going to be, I really cannot imagine there's going to be like, oh, we don't want, any Rwandan people coming near. That's not the point. That's not the point. The point is that a specific group of people have been armed. How are they being armed? And they've been set off against other Africans for the plunder of the continent with backing by certain neighboring states. And it's like I said, it's a kind of the same thing in the Sahel. I mean, there's unfortunately there are states bordering the Sahel that have actually been also accused of backing terrorist organizations. And we see, it's the same sort of international thing. That's another thing. I just say, like, on the international level, just my last thing to add here, because Ekila has said so much. A lot of the times the way imperialists right now are wreaking havoc for African people around the world, it's not directly like in the 70s when the Portuguese were like on the ground in Africa fighting with arms against Africans. No, everything is like these proxy wars where they set Africans against each other and they back one side and they make it seem like it's just Africans fighting. It's what they do with M23. It's what they do in the Sahel. It's what they're doing in Haiti. It's the same thing. The Haitian gangs, the gangs in Haiti, the Africans are fighting each other in these gangs who are backing these gangs. So it's really, I see a strong parallel between the Sahel terrorists, M23, the Haitian gangs. They're all imperialist forces. It's just that, it's like the Europeans don't come here to fight us directly anymore, but it's the same thing. So I'll stop here.
Well put by the both of you. Ekila, you have something else to add, please.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And the fact also that you had Antonio Guterres, from the United Nations saying that, oh, but the M23, they have better, weapons, more sophisticated than us. It shows us a lot. They cannot just be, Congolese in the forest and have that type of, come on. It's absolutely not concrete. And also, it's confusing for people because they see Félix Tshisekedi saying that, blaming Rwanda and talking about Rwanda. So it's difficult for people to understand how, all of this can happen like this and how they are, in complicity with with all this traffic. But the fact is that, for example, when you have Africans saying that, but your president is not doing things. Okay, but when it was in Senegal, when it was Macky Sall in the power, you never had, the idea of saying that Macky Sall is the population. That's the same for Congo. We are absolutely not the president and the power, so you have to make the difference because it was not a president elected by the people that is there to protect the interest of the people. Absolutely not. He's just there. And the difference between Félix Tshisekedi and Joseph Kabila is that Félix Tshisekedi probably now he knows a little bit more, but at first he was so lost on all the strategical interest and everything, it was so complicated for him to really understand everything, all the, under the cards situation, and yeah, so it's very interesting because also we cannot count, for example, like in Niger, Burkina, or Mali, in a strong army, that maybe can take the power, because this army is infiltrated. When you understand who is James Kabarebe, who were, the chief of the head of how do you say that, Inem? The head of the staff, the head of the army. He was the head of the army in Rwanda, in Congo. We have an army so much infiltrated that we cannot even count on this army to make something. But the reality is that we need to find a solution, and to be a power, military power, a dissuasive military power. So yeah, if we seek for solution, I mean, of course, we are not just there, to explain the situation, but also as an organization, we also have to, to suggest solution and to give, idea of what we can do, what we should do. And I think that diplomacy and negotiations will never help Congo to, be out of all this crisis. Because as long as we decide to keep these territories, these lands where we have all of this, these minerals, these resources, if we would like to keep these resources, we have to be a strong military power. There is no other way. So it's kind of complicated. And now we have, because I in this power, it's not everyone that is involved, in this complicity, in this traffic of minerals. But for example, we have this, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, she's doing the job. She's trying to do the job. But I don't think that if we sit with people, we will find a solution. With the negotiations and everything, we will not find a solution into that. It's good that she tries to do that, but also she should first not go into, accept again to talk about the FDLR. Because for the people who is, who are now connected to this show, as Africans, as Pan-Africanists, as people from diaspora, to understand well, they will also be, in front of all this argument of FDLR. So they will be just lost, saying that, oh, but Congolese government is protecting, the genocide, the genocidaire from the Hutu genocidaire that are hide in the forest, in the Congolese forest. It's not true. They are not there anymore. They are not a threat. So the fact that our governments also accept to sit and to talk on the negotiation, on the meeting, to accept to put this point of the FDLR, imaginary threat, is something that is blocking us from going, forward on this problematic.
Very well put. I think you both summed it up nicely, and I think that the main theme I hear here in this particular segment is it's a proxy war, right? These are foreign bodies that are now who were considered Africans, now I would say, as you mentioned, imperialist, right? So they may look like us, but they are imperialist. All right. So on that note, we've talked a little bit about who the M23 rebels are. I think we do want to talk about some of the land that they've now taken. So this is going to be in 3 parts, and we'll put some things up on the screen so that you guys can kind of follow along with us. So we'll start with the fresh gains that they had made at the end of last year and where they were going. So as Inem is putting that up on the screen there, so this is where so M23 were making further gains in eastern DRC. The Rwanda-backed militia had its sights on Walikale, an important mining town located 235 kilometers north of Goma, which was obviously the capital of the northern province. And so on the 9th of March, that group captured a couple of different areas, and this is all last year. Meanwhile, there was a $5 million reward that was set as a bounty for M23 figures, and folks from the Congo River Alliance, a military political coalition that includes M23 and previously served as the head of the DRC Independent National Electoral Commission, are M23's president and military chief, respectively. And all 3 of the people that are on this list were tried in absentia because they weren't able to be there for the court cases because they're, they're not available because they're in the process of this war, and they were sentenced to death in August of last year. And so I'll speak a little bit to the offer. So the DRC is offering $4 million reward for information that leads to the arrest of the accomplices of those 3 men and other individuals being sought, as stated by the Congolese Justice Ministry. In mid-December of 2024, peace negotiations began between Rwandan President Paul Kagame and DRC President, which had been due to take place earlier in the year. They were called off. M23 launched a rapid new offensive last year, successfully seizing a few different areas near major capitals and provinces, along with numerous towns in areas rich in minerals. So since resuming those hostilities after nearly 10 years of intermittent attacks, M23 had taken control of key locations that are hubs for coltan, essential for smartphone manufacturing, as well as other areas all over the Congo. So since January of last year, 7,000 people, and that number has gone up significantly, had lost their lives due to the ongoing conflict. And so that is why there was this reward put for these three individuals. I will say there was an update at the end of last year with such sanctions and a bounty placed on the rebel leaders by Congo's government. They responded, "We will fight like people who got nothing to lose in order to secure the future of our country." That was their terminology and their words. So that is the bounty there. So moving on now to how far the M23 has further gone into the DRC. So they actually did. Let me just go back and just read it. So the Rwandan and Uganda-backed M23 militia defied calls for a ceasefire from Democratic Republic of Congo president, instead capturing Walikale, a key mining hub in the northern province, on the 19th of March this year, just a day after peace talks in Doha, Qatar. Walikale, rich in tin and large gold mines, is home to about 15,000 residents and is approximately 125 kilometers west of Goma, the largest city in eastern DRC. Since reemerging in 2021, M23's capture of Walikale marks its westernmost advance into DRC. Reports indicate that the M23 now controls a road that links the provinces in the eastern part of the country, effectively isolating the army's positions and bringing the group within 444 kilometers of Kinshasa, DRC's fourth largest city, excuse me. So on the 27th of January, M23 took control of Goma. Then on the 16th of February, captured Bukavu, the country's second largest city. On the 11th of March, the group seized another city located 110 kilometers west of Goma. And after several days of fierce fighting, according to the Congolese government, around 8,500 Congolese had experienced loss of life between January and the end of February. The United Nations reports that more than 450,000 civilians are without shelter, food, or water, while 700,000 have fled their homes. Angola attempted to broker direct negotiations between the DRC and M23 on Tuesday of last week. However, M23 withdrew from the talks on Monday of last week, or Monday of, last Monday, citing European Union for imposing sanctions against some of its leaders. So there was a lot there in terms of the movement of the M23 rebels. I want to throw it back to you, Ekila, to speak to the devastation in the country as the M23 rebels are advancing, and to speak to some of the cities that they are capturing. For those of us who are outside of the Congo and don't know how important these cities are, and what their importance is in terms of mining towns and the people that are living there, what has this been like for those people as the M23 continue to advance within the country?
Yeah, it's dramatic, and we have a lot of people that are raped. We have a lot of people that are contacting us to explain us everything that is happening right now in Bukavu, in Goma, in key cities, as you say. Then when you know the map of Congo, you understand how much they are organized and strategic, because they don't just take the country from one part. They are just going from different ways. So they have started, and this is also a point that is showing us how much also the Congolese government is not really focused on the population, because we have started, as the civil society, we have started to be in the street and to denounce in May 22. In May 22, when they enter Bunagana, they have started to enter this city. This city is a very strategic city because every day you have a lot of resources, passing by this city. It's at the border with Uganda. And when this city was taken by the M23, it was crazy for us because we knew that it was, the beginning of something. But if you saw in the public opinion, in the media, in Kinshasa, they never talk about it. It was like, okay, Bunagana, they don't care about it. And May 22, it was 3 years ago. So we have been in the street from this moment. Every 2 weeks, every week, we were in the street. We were, releasing communiques and talking to people, talking in the street, talking in the medias, doing our best, to shake the government for them to make something. Because the life of a Congolese from Bunagana, from the Rutshuru, which is, of course, not a key territory because it's not second or third city of the country, but it's territory when we have a lot of resources. So it's very strategic. And people from there, they count also. They were massacred every day for 3 years now. So it's crazy how much now when they take Goma, because it's the third second city of the country, and then Bukavu, now they are all shaking and we have to do something and we have to talk about it. But no, every Congolese life counts. We have the reports of a lot of rape. I used to work with Dr. Mukwege, the Nobel Peace Prize, who is working to help all these women having surgery and having a new life after rape as a weapon of war, used as a weapon of war. And when I talk to my, former colleagues, we have like very, very bad news of people who were raped for now 3 years. And of course, in Goma, you have a lot of people that are massacred, that are killed. We have this number, this amount of 7,000 in 1 month, people that who were killed in Goma and then in Bukavu. This is a reality. And so yes, they are now in Walikale. And when you understand where is Walikale in the country, and the history of all the rebellion that took place in the country in history, you understand. And if they are in Walikale, it means that they come back from Bukavu, but they don't really come back. They just go forward. But we are all now focused on Walikale because it's like they were in Goma and then Bukavu, and then they go back in Walikale to go in Kisangani. And Kisangani is a very strategic and important city of the country. It say that if you have Kisangani, you have almost the whole country. So we are all shaking because we understand that they are just going forward. They don't care about the negotiation, the laissez-le-feu, the ceasefire and everything. They don't really care about that. They are just progressing, But the problem is that how can you be a president? You can organize the game, the Francophonie games, the Olympic games, all this stuff, all this, to divert people, to make people enjoy in the rest of the country. You can organize even elections, but you have people suffering from the occupation of the country. We don't have anymore the same Congo than before. They are all saying, yes, the country will never lose 1 kilometer, but it's already the case for 3 years. Where are you? What are you focused on? You think that if they don't have Kinshasa, they don't have anything. And also something that I would like to say to people to make them understand, for example, why you have footage, you have videos of these people that are welcoming the AFC and the M23 like this in the key city. It's just that, first of all, it's they make sure that they put people and they say, okay, now record, just go. We received a video where they have started to record before they say, just go. You can now say welcome and everything. I don't know if I'm clear, but also you have people that are, it's not the first time that they live in the fear. You have to understand that all the families in South and North Kivu and Ituri, they have lived massacres. They have lived different conflicts. They have lived the genocide. They have lived, the rape as a weapon of war. So all the family, they have someone who were raped in this context of war. It's like they know that the Congolese government will not protect us. So they just have, to be there and to accept something. And this is also a problem that we have, is that, they have killed all the big resistance of the country. We don't really have like models that are, put in highlights in our history. So, you have a lot of Congolese that are just accepting things, accepting the situation. And, they see that, oh, the government would not help us. They are not with us. So let's just accept that to don't be killed, So it's very complicated for people to revendicate, to denounce, and to resist. This is our main problem. They know that, now the Congolese population, most of us, we are just resilient. So we accept the situation. We accept that we have to be massacred. We have to be killed. And they don't fight back. So because they don't have the army with us most of the time, the army is very, very infiltrated. I'm one of the person who is not really defending the army and not saying that, oh, everyone behind the army. No, I know that this army has to be reformed very deeply, because at every function you have people who are implicated, who are involved. In particular, the authorities, they are implicated on the plundering of the soil. They are just, playing and collaborating with our enemies. So it's very complicated for us, as Congolese people to resist. We don't really have, the weapons to do that. And so for the population, I think that they will not lose hope. And we are just there trying to do the things in the territories where, and the key city where it's happening. For example, all the activists, most of the activists, they had to leave the country. They have to be hide somewhere. Some of them, they are, till right now, they haven't get out of some houses because they are hide. They cannot go out. We have seen, for example, Delcat, Idengo, the singer, who was, a very strong activist from one of the main civil society movement, La Lucha. He was killed. He was killed by the M23 in Goma. But before that, he was also the prisoner of the Congolese government because he was denouncing the situation, the fact that the government was inactive on fighting back the Rwandese militias. So, it's very, very complex for people. And a lot of persons are killed. It's not a liberation at all for those who think that maybe, the footage and the reports or the paper or the intervention of the PRF people. And so the fact that they advance, they take some cities like Walikale, make us think that what are they going to do after that? Because if they arrive in Kisangani, it's another step, very, very dangerous for the country. Very dangerous. Yeah.
Very well put. And you spoke a lot about the human cost, and I think that's really important to understand how the people on the ground are in fear of lives, are losing lives, and are devastated and changed forever and forever impacted by what is happening by these proxy wars and imperialist armies. Before we move into the next section on the AES, Inem, do you have any final thoughts on the Congo? And then I'll also throw it back to you, Ekila, if you have any final thoughts on the Congo.
Yeah, I think seeing the map of the advancements of M23, it's easy to we hear about M23, but I wonder the extent to which we grasp what it means, for people's lives. And I think Ekila did a great job of breaking it down. M23 for all intents and purposes, is basically it's a terrorist organization. I mean, we don't hear the term used, but that's what it is. It uses violence and brute force against civilians in order to impose their rule. And so, I know people who are in Goma who are scared for their lives right now and who are trying to figure out a way out. And it's a hard situation. And I think even the question of like, well, what about these like small villages and towns and like, kind of like, why does it matter? If I'm going to be honest, if there was some sort of like terrorist occupation of any small town in the US or the UK or France, whatever the size, nobody would be like, why does it matter? I mean, there's people who live there and who are living basically under the fear of this violence. There was an interesting question here. I'll put it up. Like, what is the end game for M23 and how is it worse or better than what is currently running in Congo? And if I could just try to answer that, I'm sure Ekila could give a better answer than I could. But, M23, they're plundering Congolese resources. They're smuggling it through Rwanda, through Uganda, and other proxy states to, largely Western, industrialized capitalist countries. We understand that Congo is the basis of the world economy, Africa in general, but Congo really in particular, as the most resource-rich country on earth, is the backbone of the international capitalist economy. So, we often talk about the technologies, we talk about the iPhones and like Androids or iPhones, basically any smartphone, laptop, tablet, electrical vehicles, weapons as well. I mean, that's also a long history of exploiting Congolese resources for weapons. So the end game of M23 is to get a hold of those resources. I understand very well this question in terms of like, how is M23 better or worse than the current powers when we're saying that Tshisekedi himself is neo-colonial. So I understand like where the question comes from, because we're saying the current Congolese power isn't great either. So I don't know. I think for me, the way I understand it, or the argument I would make, it's hard for me to talk about this like comparing it to the Sahel, the AES countries right now, because we have really honestly wonderful and revolutionary leadership. But to give another example, Bola Tinubu in Nigeria is a neo-colonial leader. He listens to what the West wants out of him. He is a reactionary leader. He is not somebody who is for the people. He exploits the people, and Nigerian people have suffered tremendously economically under Bola Tinubu. But with that being said, if Boko Haram was to start, taking a hold and occupying multiple Nigerian cities, it would be worse. I mean, it would just, in terms of like the immediate violence that people would be met with, it would be worse. And so it's kind of choosing between something that is bad and in a way worse. And so, the solution is not to defend Tshisekedi as an individual. It's not to, defend Congo's current sort of political elites or, the current Congolese government that doesn't represent the interests of the people. But it's also not to swing to the other side and say, M23, just because, I'm not accusing this commenter of this, but other people on the internet have kind of said, well, if Tshisekedi is so bad, then maybe M23 isn't as bad or something. That's not the point either. I think the point is really that Congo needs to have revolutionary change. And I think it needs to be something where the powers in place are listening to the people, directed by the people, like what we see in the AES. This is, when we think about the people in Congo who have represented the interests of the people, like a Lumumba, for example, the whole point is that they were working in the interests of the Congolese people. That's what Congo needs. So it's not really, I think we have to get out of the idea of like a good guy, bad guy type of thing, when both of the solutions right now under like Tshisekedi versus M23 are both terrible. But with that being said, M23, advancing is still, going to be, in terms of direct violence, worse for the lives of Congolese people in the immediate future than their lives currently are. That's my, best answer to that question.
Excellent. Appreciate that. And then, and so Ekila, do you have any final thoughts on the Congo before we move into some of the AES updates?
What I would like to add for people to understand is also that, it's not only Rwanda who is proxy. for the Western world, but also Uganda. We have talked about it, and also if you understand how much they arrive in the country and they occupied different region of the country. You have also Museveni's son, who is I don't know if you have seen his tweets, but you have to have a look on his tweets, and he's also attacking and entering the country by another part, by Ituri province. And so when we talk about what could happen with the M23 going approaching the capital, it's like you have different scenarios that are possible, because probably they would like to make pressure for Tshisekedi to to negotiate, but to put him in a position of weakness, which is already the case. But in the same time, they are just putting a lot of different elements to put us in confusion. Inem just said it. So of course immediately we are thinking about the lives of Congolese, but also we have to see the big picture of everything. And she's right when she says that we need a revolutionary action for this country. We need to change everything. We need to change the institution, to reform everything. Because if we continue like that, we will always be, just a place when you can come, put the KO and take the resources, and they don't care about Congolese people. But it's just, the world's big functionment, the big world system, of oppression. They just do that everywhere. So we have to, we have to be strong. And what I said, because I was in Burkina Faso a few weeks ago, and I had the chance, to meet someone from the government, a minister, and he agreed with the fact that we cannot find, a solution in the negotiation. That for the Congo, we really need, to have a strong power to fight back. And as we don't have the army, as it is infiltrated, it's complicated. But in the same time, we have to understand that there is a place for Pan-Africanism, because if we have everything that we need, because we, people, they are, very prompt to blame the citizens everywhere in the world, they are using phones. But we have to understand that most of the the material that is product from our minerals, the Congolese minerals, it is for the weapons, the big industry of weapons, And so if they use the Congolese minerals to create high, very sophisticated the new technology weapons, so let's make collaboration with other countries. For example, the ones who has already in the revolution, for their sovereignty. And we know that the AES countries are the best for that. And we should just collaborate. And if we had to, to make our arms together, our weapons together, let's do it, because we have everything in our country. And that's exactly the point, is that you have leaders that's in the Congolese society that wants to make sure that the Congolese resources are transformed in Congo, in Congolese company, to benefit first for the Congolese people. But all of that, all of these people, they cannot even enter the course to be, candidates for the election or something like that, because they know that it would just be the end of everything. If we are strong, if we are a power, it's the end of everything for them. Because we have everything. Everything that the world is looking for is in Congo. I don't know why, but it's like that. So if we decide to keep that, we have to fight to have peace and, to make sure that people can live in dignity. So it's a fight of probably minimum 2 generations, and Lumumba, because we don't start anything. People like Lumumba and Pierre Mulele, you were talking about Mulele at the beginning of this show, they were fighting. They have opened this fight, but all this year after, all these decades after, it's like there was, for 50 years, we were just sleeping. because they have used all the power that they have, soft power, political power. They have their hand in everything, in all the institutions of the country, so they can control people. They can just make sure that there is a repression on all the civil society that is, in this ideology of Pan-Africanism, of sovereignty. And so they make sure that there is nothing emerging like Pan-Africanism, and leaders that can just make sure that it's finished. Now you cannot enter our country if it's not for our interest, for the interest of Congolese people, of African people. And so this is because I like the fact that we can also talk about solutions. There is solution. We have everything on our soil to make sure that we are powered. And we have, of course, brains everywhere. Congolese are so smart, intelligent. We can make something, and we can make something together. But the machine can continue after what Lumumba and Mulele and all this resistance, who we cannot even talk about them because we don't even know their name. They were killed, at the beginning of their fight. But they have opened the door, and now we just have to continue that. If we don't take the lead to continue that, we cannot make sure that one day the generations, the Congolese, the young Congolese, live in a peaceful country. So we have to be strong.
Very well put. I think that was great. And so, we appreciate you being on and giving your insights as it pertains to the Congo. So we now want to shift gears a bit to the AES update. So as Inem has alluded to, there is something to look forward to on the continent, and I think the AES is an example for all of us to follow and to look towards. And so with that, I think what we want to first do is get into the conversation of ending Africa's plunder. The Sahel takes back its resources. So the Alliance of Sahel States is leading the transformation of Africa by reclaiming its natural resources as part of a decolonial effort. Burkina Faso and Mali have long relied on gold mining as the backbone of their economies. In Niger, uranium mining has driven their economy. However, since the people-backed anti-imperialist coups, or revolutions, we should say, swept Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger in recent years, putting an end to neo-colonial rule, the countries have fought multinational corporations for greater control over their mineral resources and a more just share of the profits generated. And so with that, let's jump into a video quickly and we'll have some commentary.
President Abdurrahman Chani visited his country's Samira Hill gold mine and the Leptako Mines Company factory to observe the miners' working conditions and boost their morale. Known for its vast uranium mines, this country in Africa's arid Sahel region seeks to expand its gold mining sector. While Niger only owns a 20% stake in the gold mine, the tides have already turned in Niger's uranium mining sector. In 2024, the government nationalized the Imararan and Somer uranium mines, ending the domination of the French-owned mining giant Orano. This battle over control of the Sahel's natural resources mirrors what's happening in Niger's neighbors, Burkina Faso and Mali. In 2022, weeks before President Ibrahim Traoré came to power, a Burkina Faso court found 2 executives of the Canadian mining company Trevali guilty of manslaughter after the Percoa mine flooded, killing 8 workers. Consequently, a court ordered the mine's operations to be liquidated. After Traoré took power, Burkina Faso withdrew mining licenses for the Guiro, Yao, and Kasaka mines, liquidating Canadian company Trevali's subsidiary, Nantou Mining Company. Then, in 2024, Burkina Faso nationalized 2 more gold mines, Bungu and Wangyon, formerly owned in part by London-listed Endeavour Mining. On a similar note, Mali has been battling mining companies. The South Africa-based Anglo-American company, Australia-based Resolute Mining, and Canada-based Barrick Gold. Mali has demanded that they pay taxes. Resolute finally agreed to pay $160 million, and Barrick Gold is coughing up $438 million. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, that ousted Western-aligned leaders a few years ago, has been decolonizing the territory. So what's next? The AES plans to keep coordinating on development projects until it can eventually become a federated country without colonial borders.
Great. So now, Inem, since you were the one who reported on that story and you are currently in the AES, can you give us some more context and a little bit more insight into taking back these resources and nationalizing them as part of the strategy of the AES?
Sure. I think that this is really the cornerstone of what the AES is working to achieve. And I think, this is a good, segue as well from what we were discussing in terms of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where the country is so exploited for its resources, which are used to the benefit of really, like I said, like Western capitalist industrialized countries around the world, especially the United States and other superpowers. We have, on the other hand, 3 countries in West Africa, in the region called the Sahel, that are actually reclaiming their resources and using those resources to the benefit of their people. So, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have all made significant strides in that direction. There's a lot, and we've talked about this, Joe, behind the scenes. There's a lot of, unfortunately, I guess I would say, fake news about the AES right now. I see so many videos that are just not true in terms of what's going on with the AES. Kenya did not join the AES. There are 3 AES countries and only 3, okay? Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger. Chad is not in the AES. Togo is not in the AES. Ghana is not in the AES. Senegal is not in the AES because there's so much confusion. 3 countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and the AES. There's a lot of rumors about what they are doing, what they aren't doing. Here's what they are doing, and we can confirm 100% that they are doing this. They are nationalizing resources. Niger's uranium deposits were nationalized last year. Burkina Faso is in the process of nationalizing its gold mines, so it's nationalized several. And then an update from this year is that Mali is basically winning a battle against Canadian and British gold mines, battling them over taxes that they are owed, wanting a greater share in the profits. We hope that Mali will actually nationalize these mines, and perhaps this is a step in that direction in terms of completely owning them. But at the very least right now, Mali has the backbone to say that these countries are not going to come and, exploit our labor, take our resources, and not give us a significant amount of that profit. In addition to this, and this is not mentioned in the video, these countries are working to take steps at least towards refining those resources in-house. So Burkina Faso and Mali are both working on creating a gold refinery in each country. So we're not going to have to, send out the gold in its crude form and its, unrefined form and then re-import it as we can refine that gold here. The mining waste, there was a mining waste facility that was inaugurated in Burkina Faso. I want to say either early 2024 or late 2023. I'm trying to remember. I think it was probably 2023 that the mining waste facility was inaugurated. Well, the update to that is it's officially operational. Not too long ago, the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso was photographed and I guess videographed with people who work at that mining waste facility holding up refined gold from the scraps. These are from the scraps that are left over. They're able to transform that into something that's useful. And so that this is all being done here, locally. These are big, big steps that are super important. And then I want to talk about what the very last part of the video said. This is another aspect of things that, again, is not a rumor, not speculation, but the core of what the AES is about, which is the creation of this Pan-African Federation. They're taking these economic steps. They're working to create more industrialization. They're working to create more control over their resources. Not mentioned here, but food sovereignty is a huge part of the AES struggle. We want to, Thomas Sankara has talked about this. We want to eat, what we are producing and consume what we produce. That's a quote from Thomas Sankara. He said, where is imperialism? Look at your plate. So, we want to have a plate that represents what we're growing. Those aspects, all of those 3 economic steps are towards this goal of unifying the AES and eventually unifying all of Africa into a single Pan-African Federation. Sometimes people are confused because we understand the AES is a confederation, and the word confederation and federation are very similar sounding. So what's the difference? A confederation is what the AES is right now. They're a group in a block, in an alliance. That's a confederation. Their goal is to have a federation. That is one single country, one government. That's the United States is a federation. Venezuela is a federation, Nigeria is a federation, Russia is a federation, Brazil is a federation. These are federations. They have, they have their states. Different states are inside, like California is a state, New York's a state, but it's one country, with one government. That's what the AES wants. And it's 3 states right now: Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And of course, we hope it will grow. The leaders have said that they hope it will grow. I want to say, though, because a lot of people are like, oh, this state should join, this state should join. We have to have states that have had revolutions join. So it can't just be, any state that can just come and join in. It has to be a state that is going to, defend the same values of the AES, to have this revolution in place where they are actually going to control their resources. So we can't just say that, we want every country to join if their leaders are still neo-colonial. So if the leader is still answering to the West, we can't let them in the club. But we do want them to eventually, all the countries, we want them to eventually come. That's why we want to call on Africans everywhere to struggle. If your leaders are corrupt, if your leaders are neo-colonial, if your leaders are puppets to the West, that's why you struggle against them, so you can have good leadership. And then you should have your country, once you have the good leadership, you should have your country come and join the AES. So I'll stop there.
I appreciate that. It was really helpful, and I'm glad you were able to get that context. Ekila, any additional thoughts from your perspective, right? As someone who's in the region, any additional thoughts on what the AES has done to nationalize these mines, and as an example for what we'd like to see elsewhere?
I mean, it's really amazing, and the fact that we know because we have our own medias, and this is something it's a privilege that we have. The fact that we can go on different medias, Pan-African medias, and that we can have the real news, not the fake ones. Because before, for the first sovereign leaders, for the first Pan-Africanists, it was very hard. It was hard for people to know exactly what is happening, because, of course, now you have a lot of Africans that have to take the news of other countries through French television, French medias, especially on Burkina, on Niger, on Mali, But if you know exactly what is happening, the fact that now they can take all these companies and make sure that the benefits can go directly to the country, to this African country, to the population, the success of these 3 countries is amazing, and we just see that it can be a model for the other countries. And again, I say for the Congolese, I'm not talking about the Congolese government, because I know that they are already in a special place, and they are just like that, thinking about their own interest. But we need to see the AES as a model of what we should do. Unfortunately, of course, with the Congo, it's so different, because we cannot count on the army. But the fact that it works, that's for the economy, because numbers don't lie, and the numbers are there. For Niger, we see deeply how much the thing is going better and better, months after months, with the fact that now Niger can have the control of their economy. And of course, the next step is with the money, the currency. It will change a lot, because of course we are under colonization till we don't have our own money. And so this is also something that is problematic, but I know that they are working on that. So it's a model. I'm very proud, to be an activist, and to and to live at these special moments of the history. Because during 50 years, as I told before, it's like we were kind of sleeping. It was very hard, to create something, to work on something, to fight, and to see the results. Now, when you are fighting for 20 years, I'm 41, I started the fight, I was around 14 years old. So it's been a long time. I was, on the ground fighting. We were arrested. We have lived a lot of things, but we are still there, fighting. And for 2-3 years now, we can see that type of countries, that are doing something and it's successful. So of course we are there. We are, it helped us also in Congo and in other countries who are still under the domination of colonialist empires, under the colonialism of the U.S. Mainly. But we have like hope for the future, and we have, I mean, and the thing that people have to understand, because you say that no, there is no Togo, there is not this country. No, yes, you're right. But the fact is that, of course, it can be great if other countries can join, because it's the fact that there are 3 countries working together. It's, it's not one country isolated. Like, for example, Cuba, it was very hard when Cuba started to be alone. When Cuba started to be alone, with no Soviet Union, no China, because China, they just turned to another type of economy. So Cuba was kind of alone during a lot of years when Venezuela was not in the, in the scene. And so it's hard for one country to make sure that it's, we are successful. But when you have other countries joining, it's better. So I hope that, we can, make sure that we can make it together and create something bigger. Yeah, in French you can say effet boule de neige. It means that, it works. Okay, there is other forces in the country, in the civil society, political future leader probably they can join and make something in the country, and then, join that type of solidarity. And also we know that Lumumba was killed because they had also this plan of creating the United States of Africa, just because I just saw this comment. It was one of the reasons. It was the Hyde's, plan. So yeah, we have to understand what was the plan of the first Pan-Africanist, and to make sure that we can continue this fight, because this is the only way for us to survive. And I really want to use these words, just to finish, to use the word survive, because people have to understand that if we don't fight, and Congolese people have the first responsibility, if we don't fight, we will just disappear from the map.
There it is. Very well put. And so, we started with talking about the confederation, right? This group of states that are moving towards a federation. So now let's move to one of the states within this confederation, Burkina Faso. And of course, Ibrahim Traoré is probably the most popular and most well-known of the 3 leaders of these 3 states. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how they've nationalized land. So major land reform has come to Burkina Faso, bringing the country's trajectory back to a Sankarist direction, Thomas Sankara direction. On the 5th of February, Burkina Faso Minister of Economy and Finances, Dr. Aboubakar, announced all lands belonging to the state and foreigners are no longer allowed to hold rural land titles. This is similar to the land reform measures adopted by assassinated socialist Pan-Africanist President Thomas Sankara from 1949 to 87, that's how long he was alive. That was the years he was on earth, who nationalized land in Burkina Faso in 1984. Under the counter-revolutionary government of the counter-revolutionary government found guilty in Sankara's assassination. The government privatized land in 1991. So the government that took over, who's assassinated, who's responsible for his assassination, took over and privatized the land in 91. The new law is the second and most expansive land reform policy enacted under President Ibrahim Traoré. In June of 2023, the government enacted a law to exclude private real estate developers from urban planning operations and limit the number of hectares, private equity and possessions of urban real estate to 5 hectares. So in addition, real estate developers and urban landowners who plan to build on their land must submit their intentions to the government and begin construction within a specified time. The law aims to prevent land grabbing and speculation and to increase mass access for Burkina Faso's land. As Sankara told his people, improve your land and farm it in peace. That time is over when people sitting in their parlors can buy and resell land on speculation. So with that, let's jump into a video and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
Que la terre appartient désormais à l'État et c'est l'État qui peut, à travers un acte réglementaire, prendre un texte pour octroyer. Il n'est pas possible pour un étranger de pouvoir avoir un titre de propriété sur les terres rurales.
So to some, this might seem controversial. To others, I think, and to most, this is really the way forward. And it ensures that the land gets developed and used for its proper, value and to ensure that the people of the country benefit. Inem, any thoughts on the nationalization of the land and any context you want to give beyond what we just saw in that video?
Yeah, I mean, this is super important. I mean, what's happening in the AES is an anti-imperialist struggle. It's also a class struggle in the sense that we're building an economy that is for the majority of the people in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, for the farmers, for the workers. It's not just for, a small segment of the elite of the population, the bourgeois class. It's for really the working people, the majority. It's not like a neo-colonial system where there's people at the top who are connected to this international imperialist system, this international imperialist capitalist system, and they, consume all the riches of the country, and then the majority of the people are left with these little crumbs. That's what we see in most African countries. Thomas Sankara has another quote. He said, you have to choose between drinking water, champagne. You have to choose between champagne for the few and drinking water for everybody, for all. And Burkina Faso right now, like Mali and Niger, is choosing drinking water for all instead of just privileges for, a small class of people at the top. And so that's really what we're seeing with this land, these land policies. So, to give you an idea, in terms of the imperialist front, the fact that the state controls all of the land officially, it belongs to the state, means that at any point, if there are, maybe say like a multinational corporation coming to buy up all the farmland or something like that, there's unfortunately, a lot of countries in Africa have huge amounts of land, massive amounts of land that belong to private, interests or foreign interests, such as the UAE, for example, which has grabbed a lot of land in different African countries in recent years, countries like Liberia and Kenya. The state at any time can basically say no, because they ultimately have the real authority over who the land belongs to. So they have the right to seize it. And then there's a lot of provisions in place in terms of land. I can speak even more to the aspect of the urban real estate, for example. It really is a question of class struggle, because even some of the private Burkinabe companies, even some of the private local companies were buying up entire neighborhoods in Ouagadougou and in Bobo Dioulasso, the two biggest cities in Burkina Faso. And basically, because they own entire neighborhoods, they were like building the cities of like basically people who were dependent on them and who were basically working for them. And there was a lot, I know there's a lot of exploitation because I actually knew some other people who worked for the, I'm thinking of one private company in particular called Abdul Service, who was working for like this company. And, you know, the government got a hold of what was going on and said, you know, this is exploitation. Even if it's between Africans, it was still exploitation. And said basically that we're not allowing this anymore. So if you purchase land in Burkina Faso now, it will be leased to you. You'll have a title, but the government ultimately, the state ultimately owns the land. And then you can only have a small amount of hectares of urban land. It's limited. So you can't just buy up like a neighborhood anymore. You can have a certain amount of land, and then you have to explain to the state, what are you going to do with the land? Like, what is your intention in terms of how you're going to develop it? And then you have to prove within like maybe 2 or so years, like, here's the proof that I'm doing with the land what I said I would. Because, you know, there was something at one point where it's like even a lot of like villagers were out of desperation and like need, were selling all of their land up to these private companies, like basically depriving their families of like historical land. They're selling all this land, not really understanding, I guess, you know, the value of what it should be worth. And the land wasn't being developed by some of these private entities. It was just used for speculation. So, you know, the waiting for the cost of the land, the value to go up, so that, you know, they could profit from it, but they weren't like developing anything from it. They had no projects in terms of what they wanted to do with the land, other than just to hope, you know, and to wait for it to cost a lot of money so that, you know, they can benefit from it. So this is what the government is really struggling against. You know, they want to create an economy for all of the people of the Sahel. They want something that the farmers can benefit from directly, that, you know, villagers, townspeople, workers, miners, I mean like miners in the mines, but also miners like the youth as well, you know, both senses of the word, are benefiting. And, you know, one person said there's a book, Kwame Nkrumah, Class Struggle in Africa. That's a great book. I love Kwame Nkrumah. We're actually reading this at the Thomas Sankara Center. We have a group of folks who are reading this book. So, you know, I think this also touches in terms of what the AES is doing in Burkina. And I guess one more thing, because you said that Burkina gets the most love out of the AES, that's true. But I want people to give love to Niger and Mali as well. You know, they also have excellent leadership. You know, President Abdurrahman Chani gave an excellent interview. I think this was like in December. I want to say maybe I was on the 25th of December that he gave this amazing interview. African Stream has translated parts of it, you know, with subtitles in English, so check it out. So give love to Ibrahim Traoré. Keep giving him love. But I'm telling you, all three deserve the love. So.
Absolutely, well put. And so with that, any thoughts on that, Ekila, on the land nationalization project that is underway in Burkina Faso?
I mean, of course, 100% for it. Yeah, it's. I think it's the solution, and you know, the question of the land is very interesting and important. And we see also other countries where the lands are still, you know, owned by you know, the colonizer, the descendant of the colonizers. And for me, they all have to leave this country, you know. And we have to make sure that the leaders of every country in Africa protect, you know, the population, protect it. You can go everywhere, almost everywhere, where it's not in the AES countries. And you have, you know, African complaining that they try to start something, to start a business, to start anything, you know, but they are not, they face the fact that foreigners are privileged, you know, and so they cannot start anything because probably also, you know, the government, they think that if they make money, they would just invest on the opposition and, you know, to take the power. But it's very complicated, you know, for people to make sure that, you know, they can do something in their land as African, as Congolese, as, you know, people in the Chad, everywhere. They try to do something with their land, but it's impossible because you have all these foreign companies. So, of course, I think it's, you know, it's excellent, the fact that now they have this type of policies for their countries. Yeah, it's a model. And I also give love to to Goita and to Chani. And also and yes, you're right. The interview was like, it was a masterpiece. I really encourage people to go there. You can understand how much this guy is strategic, because he was before, in the France-Afrique machine, But this president is really amazing. Tiani, the president of Niger, he's really an example. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think that dovetails directly into the next topic, and that's Niger's Ministry of Foreign Affairs published an official communique on the 17th of March announcing that Niger is withdrawing from the French-backed international body known as the International Organization of the Francophone. Interestingly enough, the organization, referred to colloquially as the Francophonie, was founded in Niger during the NAMI conference on the 20th of March, 1970, regrouping most French-speaking countries in 5 continents. And so by 2018, the organization claimed to represent 321 million French speakers. The Francophonie is headquartered in Paris and claims to 1, promote French language and cultural and linguistic diversity; 2, promote peace, democracy, and human rights; 3, support education, training, higher education, and scientific research; and 4, expand cooperation for sustainable development. However, many have accused the Francophonie of acting as a neo-colonial body that, outside of promoting cultural and scientific exchanges, pushes French-speaking countries towards sharing a foreign policy that revolves around France's interest. Furthermore, some argue that the organization's funding French language and cultural programs works against African languages and cultures struggling under French cultural hegemony. I will say, for those who are out there, there's a saying that if you understand a language, you can understand a culture. And so our own natural languages are essential and important for us. So after people-backed coups or revolutions ousted Western-aligned leaders in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger between 2020 and 2023, the Francophonie suspended each of these states. However, the organization did not suspend Gabon or Chad, which also ousted leaders during that time. Algeria's is the only former French colony to have rejected membership from the outset, while Niger is the first former French colony to withdraw. News sources have also reported that Burkina Faso has withdrawn from the Francophonie, and Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger all broke off diplomatic and military relations with France over the past few years. In October last year, Niger, I guess, rebaptized streets and monuments that once held French names. With France's influence crumbling in the region, is Francophonie the next in line to fall? So with that, we'll jump into a video and we'll have some commentary on the other side.
Oh no, there actually is no video. It's this image.
It was okay.
It's the image. Yeah.
It was an image. Okay, so so with your thoughts then on exiting, Niger being the first, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I know we've talked about this last year in terms of the, asking the military to leave and backing out of military assistance. So this seems to be like the natural next step. But what does it mean for Niger and the other folks who have exited? I think there have been a few others since Niger made this announcement. What does this mean to exit this particular grouping?
So to give the full update, so people understand what happened, Niger was the first country to leave. And then the next day, it was confirmed Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger were all leaving together. So basically, Niger was the first one to publish their announcement, but it was a decision that was made with the entire AES. Like they have a clause in the AES Confederation founding document that says that they will have a shared foreign policy. So the AES leaders basically met together to make the decision, and then Niger was the first one to communicate it. So no AES country. So Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, none of them are in the Francophonie. So the Francophonie, like if you're an English speaker watching this, you may not have heard of the Francophonie. I know Ekila is very familiar with the organization because anybody here who speaks French anybody watching this sorry, there's a motorbike that's passing by. It's super loud, but this is part of living in Ouagadougou. Anyways, anybody who speaks French who is watching this is familiar with the francophonie. So it's kind of like, if you speak French, you know that this is, it's a powerful body institution that claims to be kind of cultural and like linguistic, but really is about foreign policy in a lot of ways. The fact, for example, that Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger were suspended from the organization after their coup, that's already something that says that, there's a certain foreign policy that this body promotes. If you are in line, you get to be part of it. If you're not in line, you're suspended. And so you kind of already see that they're not staying apolitical. They're not apolitical. They have a politic there. And, I think the description is interesting. I wrote that description, actually. Gabon, which also had a coup, and the coup is very, unfortunately, close to France and the US. Gabon was never suspended from this organization. So we can see that, it's only certain states that the francophonie is uncomfortable with, that their politics is not in line, that gets suspended. And, the organization claims to be about promoting French language. It's about French language. It's about French culture. It's about, anything to do with promoting, I guess I'll say, like, that colonization of the mind. And then, like I said, also that real, also like that physical type of geopolitical influence as well. Most of the Sahel, like the average person who lives in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, does not speak French. I mean, that's the majority of the population. It's just to tell the truth, it's just honest. Most of the population just doesn't. To give you an idea, about 20%, more or less, statistically 20% around, of Mali speaks French. About 80% of Mali's population speaks Bambara language. It's just a fact. Most people speak Bambara, and a very small minority actually speak French. In Burkina Faso, there are more people who speak More or Jola, which Jola is the same thing as Bambara. It's like a dialect of the Bambara language. More people speak this than French. It's just honest, French has served the advantage of being like a quote unquote lingua franca, which I think actually is like Latin for French language, I think, lingua franca, but like in the sense of like a common language. I think that Africans, it's debate in Pan-African circles, but I argue in favor of the fact that we should have some sort of Pan-African language of communication. I'm favorable towards Swahili. I'll say, some people will argue against me like, oh, it's irrelevant in West Africa, or this will give, one group too much power. I don't think so personally. I'm favorable towards it, but I don't know. I think right now we become dependent on French in this way where it's like, if you speak one language and your neighbor speaks another language, like French is like that bridge where you both communicate. I think Africa honestly needs to do the work of developing something that isn't going to be used and exploited by a foreign power. And I think honestly French has been. I think English is actually. I think these languages do give tremendous power to imperialist bodies. And I think sometimes we think of these things as like cultural, and then we think of cultural things as trivial. But I think that there's a material aspect to this too. I think that there's an economic gain for these Western countries when we speak their languages. I think it puts us sort of in boxes in terms of like, where do the French businesses operate? Where the people speak French? Where do the, more US, UK countries operate? I mean, everywhere, but, kind of largely in where people speak English. Where do the people from Angola and Mozambique migrate to Portugal? I think that there is a material aspect, an economic aspect when it comes to like speaking these colonizers' tongues. So I don't know, I can ramble about this for a long time, but the francophonie, if you speak French, it's a big deal. There's not really an equivalent in English so much. Like, the Commonwealth existed and it still exists, but it's like, there's not really an organization that's like, exactly like just, like we're all celebrating our ability to speak English together. I don't think that really exists. I might be wrong. I apologize if I am. But like the francophonie really is just like, we're all united as French speakers. Like, long live the French language. Long live our Frenchness. That's the vibe.
As the sole representative from an Anglophone country in West Africa, well, I mean, I spent time anyway in an Anglophone country in West Africa. I would say that I think many folks, it's not explicit, but it's definitely a part of life. Like there's been times where certain West African presidents have mentioned that English is the sole language to be spoken in public common areas, right? So not in the same way that Francophonie works, but there still is a version of it less overt. Ekila, I know we are running out of time, but do you have any final thoughts on the AES leaving the Francophonie before we round out this discussion?
Yeah, sure. Because we are all victims of this Francophonie, you know. The problem that we have is that they flood all the cultural, you know, sectors. They are everywhere. They are going on the movie, you know, the movie sector, the art sector, everywhere. And I did, you know, some musical cartoons, as you said at the beginning of the show, you know. And I had the chance to make an opening speech to one of the festival, the movie festival in Kinshasa. And I was cut in the middle of my speech because, of course, as I'm in exile, it was a video that they have, you know, they have projects on the opening ceremony. And I was cut by the director of the French Institute, who is representing also the Francophonie, you know. This is because they control everything. They don't agree with the fact that, like, a cultural activity, you know, and we have a lot of activism through the arts. It's like that. It's in our blood, you know. So they make sure that they are everywhere, that they are in the political institutions, they are in the cultural life, everywhere. They organize everything, they finance everything. You know, for example, there is some people, some directors of movie, they had to change few things in their own movie to make sure that it's okay for the you know, how do you say, the image of the friends, you know, of friends, to make sure that it's okay, that they are not too much disturbed on what they are doing in our countries. And so I'm 100% for the fact that we leave this type of institutions, it's of our organization. It's a big problem that we have, because we don't live for ourselves. We live just to make sure that we will have finance, you know, from that type of organizations, and so it's control. They give the money, so they control everyone, you know. And about the language, of course, we should have one language that can unite the continent. I agree with the fact that it should be Swahili, because most of the country, they speak Swahili. It's also a beautiful language, but it's also a very hard language to learn. And this is not because it's my language, but I think that Lingala, everyone, you know, speak Lingala because of the songs, and it's very easy, you know, to speak. So there is other language, maybe more centralized, you know, in the continent, that can be also be taken, because one of the you know, one of the problem that we should have is that people can have, you know, it can be hard for some people to learn a language. So it's better if it's already a language that we, you know, we are used to listen to. And yeah. So I'm promoting for Lingala, maybe for a common language.
Okay. And so on that point, I think it's important to I think that we should be multilingual on the continent of Africa, right? I mean, there should definitely be one common language. Of course, I agree with that too. Swahili seems to make the most sense because so many East African countries speak it already, and it is a combination of many different languages over time too. And so it was created out of all of these different languages. So I think it's an interesting one, and it's an interesting perspective. And at the end of the day, in the United States, we have elective languages we can take, and they're all, French, Spanish, German, right? These are languages that we were offered to take in school in the US. I think that many African countries can adopt that, and maybe it is Hausa, since somebody put Hausa as an example, or maybe it's like a Creole or a Pidgin or Swahili as well. So folks around the continent can maybe speak multiple languages that might work better in different regions. So I'm in agreement with you all. I think there does need to be a common language. So I agree 100%. So on that, we are a little bit over time. I want to give everybody a chance to make recommendations for books and or where they can be followed online. So I will start with you, Ekila. Do you want to give out where people can find you online and any books that you want to recommend to folks to read?
Okay, so I suggest people to to have a look on our different profiles. If they want to organize themselves with our organization, Urgences Panafricanistes, we have Pan-Africanist emergencies. That's most of our office are French speaking, but you can find a way to organize yourself in that different cellulas. But also in other countries that are English speaking, countries, you can also find help and make sure that you can organize with us. Also, we are very implicated, of course, in the AES countries. I just remember people that our president, Kemi Seba, is the founder of our organization, is also the special advisor of the President Chani in Niger. And so I suggest really people to just have a look on our social network. We are publishing a lot of things, activities. We have also our media, Afrique Résurrection. And I should also suggest people to read one of the 5 books, or the 5 books of Kemi Seba also, because there you can find the Pan-Africanist ideology that can be ideal for other countries that would join this fight to the revolution of this country that are still under the imperialism and the French Africa. So it's really interesting, because I cannot suggest all the books that I have in my mind, but maybe it's a good start, to understand maybe what we are doing and to have maybe for people a place to organize themselves and to make sure they are in an organization where we are doing things. Yeah.
Excellent. And I appreciate you being on. You've given a ton of insight and information, so we really appreciate having you. All right, so on to you, Inem. Where can people find you, Burkina Books, etc., and also, any books that you would recommend as well? I know you have a wealth of resources.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I want to conclude by answering this question that we received earlier. How can we change this when the African Union and regional governing bodies like ECOWAS have been infiltrated and corrupted? The solution is really for African people to join organizations that are fighting for revolutionary change, that are fighting for Africa's liberation. So we have our wonderful sister on here, who's part of Urgences Panafricanistes. She has shared where people can get involved. So, please reach out and, look into her organization that she's a part of. I am a part of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. That's AAPRP. Our website is AAPRP dash international. We can put the link there. I can send you that, and so we can add that. And I'm also the co-founder of the Thomas Sankara Center for African Liberation and Unity, based here in Burkina Faso, and soon based also in Niger soon. And so, please get involved. The APRP is all over the world. So, anywhere in the world that you're located, if you're an African person and you want to receive a revolutionary Pan-African political education and really understand, these questions in detail in terms of how Africa can be liberated, how Africa could be free, check out the APRP. But really the most important thing is that you join some organization, whether it's Urgences Panafricanistes, whether it's APRP, whether it's some other organization. Don't just stay, watch the YouTube videos and then you don't get involved. Or your Twitter, maybe you're watching on X or Instagram. Get involved, join something, join the struggle, whichever organization it is that you choose. So that's what I want to say. And then I also want to give a book recommendation. So I'm hoping we can conclude maybe every episode with some sort of recommendation. Now, unfortunately, the book I want to recommend is kind of hard to find. I think if you do some digging on the internet, though, that you might be able to come across it. The title is called The Challenge of the Congo, and it's by Kwame Nkrumah. I already said once in this video that I love Kwame Nkrumah because somebody said to read Class Struggle in Africa. This is literally Nkrumah right here behind me. So I love Nkrumah a lot. And he signed a secret agreement with Patrice Lumumba to create the United States of Africa between Ghana and Congo. They had a secret agreement. And if you want to learn about the details of that secret agreement, you should read The Challenge of the Congo by Kwame Nkrumah. And he talks about how important that the Congo is for the Pan-African struggle for the liberation of the continent. He said that Congo is the heart of Africa, and any wound inflicted upon the Congo is a wound inflicted upon all of Africa. So we understand this is not, every country in Africa is important, but Congo really has played this central role and had this like central priority for the Pan-African struggle for many generations.
Excellent. And I know Ekila had a couple more book recommendations as well. So we'll add those last couple of book recommendations before we close out.
Yeah, I think that if people would like to understand really well the situation, the crisis in the Congo, it's for decades, it's a lot of elements. I recommend to start a book from Patrick Mbeko. Okay, it's Mbeko, and it's called Stratégie du mensonge et du chaos. And he just released a new book about Rwanda. And I also suggest people, to just type and look for these books. There is a lot of different authors that are very interesting on, to understand really well the situation and the crisis. But I think that to start, it's very good. It's a very good author, very good analyst and geopolitician. Yeah.
Excellent. And we will be sharing all of that. We'll be joining forces after this live stream. We'll get that full list. They will go into the description. So for those of you who are watching the live stream, come back and watch the replays on whatever platforms you're on. They will be shared. And then I do want to encourage everybody. So many of you are following on X. I will mention that Authentic African is on X. And also African Stream is on other platforms under different names. They're under Ahmad Kabalo, who is the founder and CEO of African Stream, or A Kabalo on Instagram. So those are also in the description below. So if you heard those names and you weren't able to write them down quickly, everything will be in the description of the replay. So within the next hour or so, you'll have the list of books and you'll have the links to all the pages and places that you can support and or organizations that you can join. With that, I want to say, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share this live stream with anybody you know who wants to know what's going on in the Congo, and what's led to where we are today, as well as what's going on in the AES. This is a wealth of knowledge from two people who have so much information and so much knowledge. I learned a lot today. I hope you all did as well. I want to thank the two of you for sharing this knowledge, and Inem for agreeing to do this again, going back to this month in Africa, and of course Ekila for joining us today. And so with that, thanks for watching, and thank you too. We will see you all on the next live stream. Bye everyone.